I believe CAT is not a very tough exam, to be honest. It does not requires rocket science. You just have to understand the basics. Of course, it has to be your lucky day and you have to be calm.
After writing formulas for every chapter, I left 3-4 pages blank and then began the next chapter. So every time I encountered a new type of problem or a new approach or a tricky question from that particular topic, I would go back and write that concept down.
Start off with my entire prep, the very first thing I did was give a mock. Some people maybe advise against this. This is my advice to all aspirants, that the very first thing you do is give a mock. So I gave a mock and I saw where I was standing. And the first mock I did decently well. I realized that now it's something that is doable, it's not unattainable. So the very first few things I did was Arun Sharma for quants. So I solved the LOD2 questions. I had done level of difficulty 1 for my IPMAT entrance prep in 12th grade. So I picked up LOD2, and because I was short of time throughout this entire process, like the 6 months that I prepared for CAT, I was short of time because I was a part of the education curriculum going on at IIM Ahmedabad. I optimized time a lot. Like, I would not solve all questions. I used to skim through. I had also realized that I was very strong at verbal, but quads and DILR were something that I really needed to work on. So for DILR, I did sectionals. I had also set a target of 30 mocks up till the exam. So I roughly finished around 35 before I gave CAT. The last 2 months was when I actually caught up. So the last 2 months, I used to do a mock every alternate day. It would not always pan out that way because I also had exams going on in the middle and my classes as well. We also had a group of people, so I was surrounded by an ecosystem of people who were preparing for CAT. So we would discuss, different strategies to attempt the paper. My roommate and I also had this tradition that we used to compete on a Sudoku online before we started the CAT paper. Also, there was heavy analysis as well. Resources that I would suggest for CAT, if you are short of time especially, you can look at Kraku videos that are compiled. Like, that helped me a lot. For DLR, I particularly did not spend time reading up through some material or any online coaching. I just went through the 2-hour compiled crash course videos. Same with quants, I would recommend them. For verbal, I would suggest that you do past year CAT papers. That's what I did. I did past year CAT RCs specifically. So this was majorly my preparation.
So in the very first attempt, I had got all my basics done for CAT. I actually tried to do the basics, but again, the bandwidth didn't match. So I usually did self-preparation. In the last 2 attempts, I usually prepared one section very strongly and looked at what I could do in the other sections. So in the first attempt, I was very strong in quants. In the second attempt, I was very confident in DILR. And in the third attempt, I again did a lot of VARC and generally tried to balance all the sections. That also can be seen in my attempt. In the first attempt, I got an 81 percentile in VARC. In the second one, it was around 91. And in the third one, it's 96.2. In my third attempt, I generally didn't prepare anything. I was just given mocks. So while I was given mocks, it was rather than giving the mock and seeing what score I am getting, it was more important on what I am picking up from the analysis. So sometimes when I used to get a high percentile, sometimes I used to think that I should give another mock so that I have some more gaps to pick up on. I used to maintain kappa sheet, which is corrective action and preventive action. So whatever sections or whatever places I used to do mistakes in, I used to do a corrective action in which I used to see a video or solve more problems from time previous year question papers, and then a preventive action in which I used to think, should I attempt this at first? Should I attempt it afterwards? I did a very thorough analysis of each and every mock which I have given. I had given around 35 mocks across time, IMS and CL. And there have been a lot of up and downs. There have been mocks where I have scored very well and there have been mocks where I have gone even 64, 65 percentile. I think the 65 percentile mocks were more important because that's where I was learning what went wrong and what should I do to counter that thing.
It was my second attempt, but I would like to say it was my first serious attempt. Given my preparation strategy, I started my prep around in July. I joined a coaching because internal motivation is something that I lack. So I needed someone to provide external motivation, and I was already working. My job involved a lot of travel. So one day I was in Mumbai, second day I may be in Ratnagiri, third day maybe I would be traveling to Bangalore. So it was a lot of travel, and I needed someone to push me, and that coaching did that for me. My strategy was simple. I believe CAT is not a very tough exam, to be honest. It does not requires rocket science. You just have to understand the basics. Of course it has to be your lucky day, and you have to be calm. So my strategy was to just go with the basics, identify what your strong points are and work on that, and not try to cover the whole syllabus. Like for example in quants, I chose to ignore number system, and that maybe I'll do algebra, geometry, arithmetic part, because I felt there are 10 questions from arithmetic approx. If I can do 9 out of 10 from there, I am already in a decent percentile zone, and then of course I can go to different sections, PNC, where there 1 to 2 questions come every year. Apart from that, VARC was, I assumed VARC to be my strong zone, although the point difference was that all through my mocks, the lowest I scored was in VARC. So my strategy was still, I started my prep in June because I felt I should not start way early, because it leads to burnout by the time you reach August, September, and that is not a good thing that you should do. I would assume given I was an engineer, so maybe I had some upper hand in quants and DILR, which made me confident. So it is very different for different people. So you should know when to start. Just do not compare with people who are starting in February. There are people who start in September and they score much better than people who start in February. So you should know your strengths and weaknesses. I started giving mocks pretty late, that was September. My point was I should do my syllabus basics first, I should practice questions, and then mocks should be a part. Because for me, mocks was not just something that I would sit for 2 hours or 3 hours. I used to do proper analysis. I used to sit with my coaching mentors with the analysis that this is how it should be done, or this should be my strategy. So I'm not the right person but to come for me for mock advice, because I gave very few mocks. I think I gave around 12 to 13 mocks compared to the average 25-30 mocks that people give. But yeah, all those 13 mocks were properly analyzed. So after every mock, I used to change my strategy. For example, after the first mock, I would skim through all the quants questions. I would find out the easy ones, and then I'll do. After second mock, it was like, no, just spend 1 minute on every question, find which one is easy and keep solving it, and then going forward, and then come back to the questions that you have skipped. Same went with VARC. I assumed VARC is my strong section, but again I was scoring very low in VARC. So I used to practice VA sets and RCs daily. I used to do around 2 RCs daily.
It was around mid-August that I decided, okay, I'll take up CAT. I had some resources which I had studied about before. What do I want to approach? How do I want to approach it? So I researched on that, what should be my plan of action. I took 10 days to first chart a plan as to how I should go about it. And around the first week of September is when I actually started preparing for CAT per se. So I had around 3 months left for CAT. So how I divided it into was QA, LRDI and VARC. So giving JE, having a background in quants, I was a little more comfortable with quants as such. So I did not really have to put in as much efforts as I did for LRDI and VARC. However, there were some important aspects I would like to highlight about my journey with QA. So the most important thing of that is I made a formula book, which is said that, something which is advised by everyone to make a formula book. However, what I did was I also, after writing formulas for every chapter, I left 3-4 pages blank and then began the next chapter. So every time I encountered a new type of problem or a new approach or a tricky question from that particular topic, I would go back and write that concept down. Talking about LRDI, I realized that LRDI is more about how do you see the data and decide how to approach it. And when you say approach, it means how do you represent the data. So what I used to do was I used to first solve the set with a pencil. Then after finishing or not able to finish, I would go back to see the solution. Then I would see what mistakes I've made, and if I've made any mistake, I would circle that in blue. So that is what I would know next time that I made a mistake. Or if I was not able to solve, I would write it separately in blue pen so that there's difference between the pencil and the blue pen. And even in that, when I'm revising it for the second time, whatever I feel is important, I would highlight it with a black pen. So by the time I'm revising it for the third time, I'm very clear that what are the mistakes I'm making, what are the mistakes I have to avoid. And that really helped me even in mocks and in the D-Day as well. Talking about VARC, since I had only 3 months of time, I did not follow the traditional approach of reading magazines, articles, novels. So I directly jumped into solving questions. I followed a more exam-oriented approach of approaching RCs. So I would solve RCs, then whatever mistakes I'm making, again I made a mistakes book of VARC as well, and I would note down the mistakes. So let's say I chose this option because it was too extreme, or it was a hasty generalization. So these kind of things I would note it down, so that the next time I don't repeat those mistakes. One important strategy that helped me in VARC was how I approached the vocabulary part of it. So I realized in the beginning that there were a lot of words I was not able to comprehend during the exam. So how do I approach it? So what I did was I made a list of words that I wanted to remember in the future. I would note them down on a post-it, and that post-it I would post it on a chartboard in my room. Like that, there were like thousands of words by the end of 3 months that I would have in front of me. So every day after I wake up, I would glance through them, and in that way, those words got ingrained in my brain. Especially I highlighted some words with a highlighter, which were the tones. These tones I was struggling with a bit. And that's why I chose to highlight it separately, so that when I focus on that, I'm able to recollect that during the exam. So that was briefly my strategy for CAT.
Starting with VARC, the only thing that I specifically did for VARC this year differently was read more books and just read more books. That was one thing that was suggested to me by my mentor at IMS, Scrabbler sir. So that is one generic advice that even I would like to give to all aspirants, because that helps you even after your acing of CAT, because even in MBA you have to go through pages of case studies, and you just need to have a good reading speed. That is a life skill that helps everywhere. So that was one thing that I really worked upon. I read as many books as possible. Initially I actually had to start from scratch from books that led my interest and caught my interest, something like comic books or basic story books. Then I moved on to genres which are not really my cup of tea, or which are not really comfortable for me. So I moved out of my comfort zone, but eventually the whole key was to read as many books as possible. Not just books. In fact, I also used to read, I'm not a newspaper person, so I also used to read blogs daily. In fact, in IIM's Bharat's curated reading list was one thing that helped me immensely in that perspective. It's not an exhaustive list, but it also has a lot of bifurcations as to which topic I want to read an article on. So that was a very, I would say, elaborated resource in terms of reading the blogs. That was one thing that I referred to. I read articles from Aeon or The Guardian, etc. And of course, my regular reading for 1 to 1.5 hours every day. So that is one thing that I did for VARCs. So for DILR also, I specifically stuck to one specific strategy, and that is the only thing that you can do really, is that building a large database of sets by practicing more and more sets. The only rationale behind that is to reduce the surprise element during the time of CAT. The more sets you solve, the more types of sets that you are familiar with, the more types of questions that you are familiar with, the more plug-in conditions that you are familiar with, it will strike back to you while you are writing the CAT exam, and it will help in one way or the other by either reducing the surprise element or by helping you have that recall factor. Okay, at that time when I was solving this mock or when I was solving this set, I used this method, because of which right now also I can try that. So basically it reduces your time and effort also. So that was one thing that I did, is tried to increase my database of sets that I've solved by as much as possible. I solved sets from the IMS material that I have, and majorly I solved sets from the past year papers. Of course, CAT has a tendency to surprise you always, so there is going to be some or the other surprise element always. So I followed the ABC strategies, in which A essentially means abhi karo, which should solely be based on the time taken to solve that question, around 40 to 50 seconds, just not more than that. If it's not happening in that much time, you can ruthlessly leave it. Don't worry, trust the process, come back to it. That's what I had inside my mind. Round B were the questions which took around 1.5 to 2 minutes. Your proper time, speed, distance questions, arithmetic questions, all of that. C were the questions which I knew just after reading that this is not going to happen, it's better to not attempt it, just leave it, and then come back to the other questions of other rounds, right? So this is the strategy that I essentially followed. Another thing that I realized during the process was just that just because a question is looking lengthy does not mean that it is a difficult question. There are a lot of arithmetic questions which are worded around a story, like he gave X, Y, Z to this, and a lot of that, right? So just because the question is lengthy, that does not mean that it is difficult. And just spending that reading time, here again comes the reading speed habit that I was mentioning. Having a good reading speed even helps in DI and LR and quant section. So having a good reading speed, I was able to read the questions quickly and decide whether or not it is a doable question or not. And just because it is looking lengthy, there were a lot of questions which were actually easy and doable in like 40 to 50 seconds. So that is also something that I worked on during my quants prep.